Your family is gathered around the dinner table, everyone's laughing, taking photos, having a great time. But there's one person who looks absolutely ridiculous, like they've been visited by the ghost of bad makeup choices. Their under eyes are so white they're practically glowing, making them look like a reverse raccoon in every single family photo. And the best part? They have absolutely no idea why everyone keeps staring at them with barely contained smirks. That person was my makeup stealing aunt, and I'm about to tell you exactly how she ended up looking like Casper the friendly ghost at our family gathering. If you've ever dealt with someone who just won't respect your boundaries no matter how many times you ask nicely, then you're going to absolutely love this story. Hit that like button if you're ready for some seriously satisfying revenge, subscribe for more stories like this, and buckle up because what I did to my aunt was so perfectly petty that she never touched my stuff again. Let me set the scene for you. A few weeks ago, my aunt came to stay with us. Now, when I say came to stay, I mean she was supposed to be here for just a weekend while her apartment got fumigated. You know how these things go, right? What starts as a quick visit somehow morphs into a semi-permanent living situation. One weekend turned into 2, then 3, and before we knew it, she had basically moved into our guest room and was treating our entire house like her personal shopping mall. At first, I didn't mind. Family is family, and we all need help sometimes. My aunt has always been the type of person who's a little too comfortable in other people's spaces, but I figured it was temporary. Boy, was I wrong. What started as occasional borrowing quickly escalated into a full-blown territorial invasion of my personal belongings. She started with my clothes. I'd come home from work to find her wearing my favorite sweater or my new jeans. When I'd mention it, she'd just laugh it off with that dismissive wave of her hand and say something like, "Oh honey, you have so many clothes, you won't even miss it." But here's the thing, I did miss it. Every single time. Then she moved on to my snacks. I'm talking about the good stuff, the expensive dark chocolate I save for rough days, the specialty teas I order online, the fancy crackers I splurge on occasionally. I'd reach for something I was looking forward to, only to find an empty package. Left behind like some kind of cruel joke. Again, when confronted, she'd give me that same dismissive response, "You won't even notice." But the absolute worst part, the thing that really pushed me over the edge, was when she started helping herself to my makeup. Now, let me explain something to you. I don't have a casual relationship with makeup. I'm someone who genuinely enjoys the artistry of it, and I invest in quality products. We're talking about foundations that cost $60 a bottle, concealers that are $40 for a tube the size of my thumb, and eyeshadow palettes that cost more than some people's grocery bills. This isn't just about money, though the financial aspect definitely stings. It's about respect, boundaries, and the fact that makeup is incredibly personal. These are products that touch my face every single day. They're matched to my exact skin tone, chosen for my specific skin type, and organized in a way that makes sense to me. When someone else uses them, they're not just using a product, they're invading something deeply personal. The first time I noticed my makeup had been used, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she had an emergency and needed to borrow something quickly. It happens to the best of us. But then I started noticing it happening every single day. My expensive foundation would be sitting at a different angle. The concealer tube would have fingerprints on it that weren't mine. My carefully organized eyeshadow palette would have colors mixed together in ways that made my perfectionist heart cry. I decided to address it directly but kindly. I knocked on her door one evening and said, "Hey, I noticed you've been using my makeup. I'd really appreciate it if you could ask first, and maybe we could find you some of your own products instead." I kept my voice light and friendly, thinking this would be a simple misunderstanding to clear up. Her response? She actually laughed. Not a nervous laugh or an embarrassed laugh, but a genuine, dismissive laugh. "Oh come on," she said, waving her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "You have so much makeup. You won't even notice." There. It was again, that phrase that was starting to make my blood boil. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the quantity, it was about the principle. These products were expensive, they matched my skin, and I would really prefer if she asked before using them. She just rolled her eyes and said, "Don't be so dramatic. It's just makeup. Just makeup." Those two words echoed in my head for the rest of the night. To her, it was just makeup. To me, it was a violation of my personal space, my belongings, and my clearly stated boundaries. But I decided to try the patient approach one more time. The next morning, I bought her a small selection of basic makeup products, nothing too expensive, but decent quality drugstore brands in what I thought might be her shades. I presented them to her with a smile and said, "I thought you might like to have your own makeup while you're staying here." You know what she did? She barely glanced at them. "Oh, that's sweet," she said, "but I prefer the good stuff you have." Then she literally patted my cheek like I was a child and walked away. I stood there holding the bag of makeup I'd just spent my own money on, feeling like I'd been slapped in the face. That night, I watched her go through her routine. She'd disappear into my bathroom for about 30 minutes every evening, and I could hear her humming contentedly while she applied what was essentially my entire makeup collection to her face. The casual audacity of it was breathtaking. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I tried talking to my parents about it, thinking maybe they could have a word with her. But they just gave me the typical family response, "She's going through a tough time with the apartment situation. Can't you just be understanding for a little while longer?" They meant well, but they didn't understand that this wasn't about being understanding, it was about basic respect. The breaking point came about a week later. I had a job interview, a really important one for a position I'd been working toward for months. I woke up early, feeling nervous but excited, and went to do my makeup. That's when I discovered that my favorite foundation, the one that matched my skin perfectly and cost me almost $70, was completely empty. Not just low, but completely, utterly empty. I stood there in my bathroom, holding the empty bottle, feeling a rage so pure and intense that I actually started shaking. This wasn't just about makeup anymore. This was about someone taking advantage of my hospitality, ignoring my clearly stated boundaries, and showing a complete lack of respect for me as a person. I had to do my makeup with backup products that didn't match as well, and I spent the entire interview feeling self-conscious about how my face looked. Thankfully, I still got the job, but the experience left me feeling violated and angry in a way I'd never experienced before. That evening, as I sat in my room listening to my aunt hum happily in my bathroom while using my makeup yet again, something shifted in my mind. The patient, understanding approach wasn't working. Direct confrontation wasn't working. Family intervention wasn't working. It was time for a different strategy. I started planning my revenge with the careful precision of a military operation. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and the beauty of it was that it would be completely harmless but absolutely mortifying. My aunt was about to learn that actions have consequences, and some lessons are best learned through experience. I went to my makeup collection and found an old concealer tube that I'd stopped using months ago. It was way too light for my skin tone, we're talking borderline ghostly white. I'm talking about a shade that would make a vampire look tan. This concealer was so pale it was practically luminescent, but the tube was from the same brand as my current concealer. Here's where my plan got beautifully devious. I carefully peeled off the label from my current concealer, the one that matched my skin tone perfectly, and applied it to the ghostly white tube. The switch was seamless. To anyone who didn't know better, it would look exactly like my regular concealer. I placed the booby-trapped concealer right on top of my vanity, positioned like bait in the most obvious spot possible. Then I moved my real concealer to a hidden spot in my drawer. The trap was set, and all I had to do was wait. The waiting was almost unbearable. I felt like a kid on Christmas Eve, except instead of waiting for Santa, I was waiting for my aunt to basically put Santa herself into the most embarrassing makeup situation of her life. Every evening, I'd listen for the telltale sounds of her makeup routine, wondering if tonight would be the night she grabbed the wrong tube. It took 3 days. 3 days of barely contained anticipation, of biting my tongue every time she emerged from the bathroom looking perfectly normal. But on the 4th day, I heard it, the familiar sound of her humming while she did her makeup. This time, though, I positioned myself where I could see her when she came out. 20 minutes later, she emerged from the bathroom, and I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. The concealer had done exactly what I'd hoped it would do. Her under eyes were blindingly white, and I mean blindingly white. It looked like she'd applied highlighter with a paint roller. The contrast against her natural skin tone was so stark that she looked like she was wearing a mask. But here's the thing about bad makeup: sometimes you can't see how bad it is until you're in different lighting or you see photos of yourself. In the dim lighting of the hallway, she seemed oblivious to her reverse raccoon appearance. She walked past me with confidence, completely unaware that she looked like she'd been visited by the ghost of makeup mistakes past. The real test was going to come the next week at our family dinner. My grandmother was turning 75, and the whole extended family was coming together to celebrate. It was going to be one of those events where everyone dresses up, takes lots of photos, and generally tries to look their best for the family album. The day of the dinner arrived, and I watched with barely contained glee as my aunt went through her usual makeup routine. I could hear her humming contentedly in the bathroom, completely oblivious to the fact that she was about to make herself the unwitting star of what would become legendary family photos. When she emerged from the bathroom, I had to excuse myself to laugh silently in my room. She had gone full glam for the family dinner: elaborate eye makeup, perfectly contoured cheeks, beautiful lip color. She looked absolutely stunning from the neck up, except for the fact that her under eyes were so white they were practically glowing. It was like she'd applied glow-in-the-dark paint under her eyes. The family dinner was everything I could have hoped for and more. We arrived at the restaurant, and I watched as family member after family member did double takes when they saw my aunt. The lighting in the restaurant was bright and unforgiving, making her ghostly under eyes even more pronounced. But the real magic happened when we started taking photos. You know how families are, someone always has to document every moment. My cousin was snapping away with her camera, and my aunt was posing confidently for every shot, completely unaware that she was creating what would become the most memorable family photos in our history. In every single photo, she looked like a reverse raccoon. The white under eyes created such a stark contrast that it was impossible to focus on anything else. She looked like she'd been struck by lightning or had seen a ghost. It was simultaneously hilarious and perfectly fitting. The best part was watching everyone try to be polite about it. My family members kept shooting confused glances at each other, clearly wondering what was wrong with her makeup but too polite to say anything. I caught my mother making a face in one photo that I will treasure forever, this expression of complete bewilderment mixed with secondhand embarrassment. About halfway through the dinner, my aunt started to notice that something was off. People were staring at her more than usual, and not in the admiring way she was used to. She kept touching her face and checking her reflection in her phone, but phone cameras aren't always the best for showing true colors, especially in restaurant lighting. It wasn't until we were looking at the photos on my cousin's camera that the truth finally hit her. I watched her face change from confusion to horror as she saw herself in the pictures. Her eyes went wide, her mouth fell open, and she actually gasped out loud. She immediately pulled me aside, her voice tight with embarrassment and anger. "Did you change something in your makeup?" she asked, her eyes searching my face for any sign of guilt. Mine looked weird tonight. This was my moment. The moment I'd been waiting for. I looked her straight in the eye, smiled my sweetest smile, and said, "Oh, maybe it wasn't your shade after all. But I'm sure you won't even notice." The recognition in her eyes was immediate and satisfying. She knew exactly what I'd done, and she knew exactly why I'd done it. For a moment, she just stared at me like she was trying to figure out if I was really capable of such elaborate pettiness. Then her face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, embarrassment, and finally, grudging respect. She huffed, muttered something under her breath about people being sneaky, and stomped off to the bathroom to try to fix her makeup. But the damage was done. The photos were already taken, the lesson was already learned, and the family dinner was already ruined for her. The most satisfying part wasn't even the ghostly makeup or the embarrassing photos. It was the look of realization on her face when she understood that I had outplayed her at her own game. For weeks, she had dismissed my concerns with that infuriating phrase, "You won't even notice." Now, when I used those same words back to her, she finally understood how dismissive and disrespectful she had been. The family photos from that dinner became instant classics. My aunt looked absolutely ridiculous in every single one, and while I felt a tiny bit bad about it, I mostly felt vindicated. She had ignored my boundaries, dismissed my feelings, and taken advantage of my hospitality. The ghostly concealer was just karma in cosmetic form. Looking back on it now, I realize that sometimes people need to experience the consequences of their actions to truly understand why their behavior is problematic. My aunt had spent weeks ignoring my clearly stated boundaries, and no amount of polite conversation was going to change that. Sometimes, the only way to get someone's attention is to speak their language, and in this case, that language was makeup. The really beautiful part of this story is that it worked. She still stays with us now and then when she needs to, but funny enough, she hasn't touched a single thing of mine since that dinner. She learned her lesson in the most embarrassing way possible, and I got the satisfaction of knowing that justice was served, one ghostly concealer at a time. If this story gave you the same satisfaction it gave me, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to deal with someone who just wouldn't respect your boundaries? What did you do about it? And of course, subscribe for more stories of perfectly petty revenge and family drama that'll make you feel better about your own relatives. Trust me, we've all got that one family member who needs to learn a lesson the hard way.